Hey everybody, happy summer, Movie Man here. It's been a while since I produced any content, and for those who have been waiting, I apologize. Summer kind of got away from me, life sort of gets in the way, and I've also been kind of thinking about what type of either genre or movie I want to do next, and I decided to dive into the world of 1970s TV movies. And we're going to talk about one called the Norliss Tapes. First, a little backstory here. In 1972, ABC released a TV movie produced by Dan Curtis, written by Richard Matheson from an unpublished novel by Jeff Rice, directed by John Llewellyn Moxey, starring Darren McGavin as a Las Vegas reporter who was investigating a series of murders which are being committed by a modern-day vampire. The story is incredibly well written. It is scary. It is funny. It is well acted. And it became the highest-rated TV movie of its time. And to this day is still ranked amongst the top-rated TV movies ever. A year later, ABC released another Dan Curtis movie, starring Darren McGavin as reporter Carl Kolchak, is a sequel to The Night Stalker, called The Night Strangler. This one sees Kolchak in Seattle, as he's tracking a killer who happens to have been alive for 144 years. Personally, I don't think The Night Strangler is nearly as good as The Night Stalker. I think its monster or villain is kind of weak. But again, the character of Carl Kolchak is strong enough to carry the picture. Now, other networks, seeing that this might be a trend of scary movies, maybe produced by Dan Curtis, might be a thing, wanted in on the deal. And the first network to do that was NBC, who on February 21st, 1973, released another Dan Curtis production, written by William Nolan and directed by Dan Curtis, titled The Norliss Tapes. The story centers on a writer named David Norliss, played by Roy Finnis, who is writing a book debunking the supernatural and occult. He comes upon a woman named Ellen Court, played by Angie Dickinson, who was basically in every other TV movie at that time, or so it seemed. And much like everything else, she's very good in this. She plays a woman who has had a rather terrifying experience. That her dead husband, James Court, a moderately successful sculptor, has apparently come back to life, and tries to kill her one night. Now, the story is told through a series of tapes, which Norliss's agent, Stanford, plays for us. Now, Ellen Court, one night, is in her home, and she hears her dog barking, and wakes her up, and her and the dog go out to her husband's studio, in which she encounters her recently dead husband, James, who kills her dog and takes a couple of shotgun blasts before Ellen runs off. Now, our introduction to James Court provides us with one of the first kind of good jolts of the film. He has these wild eyes, these yellow and red wild eyes, and this gray skin, and it does kind of make a cool first impression. Ellen, on the advice of her sister, goes to see David Norliss to tell her what she has experienced. Now, for somebody who is writing a book debunking things that just happened to Ellen, he kind of buys into this rather quickly. He doesn't do much to kind of talk her out of it. He doesn't do much to sort of say to her, "Are you really sure you saw what you saw?" And maybe, he doesn't really do much to debunk her story. She explains to him that her husband had been going through experiencing a crippling disease, and he met this mysterious woman, Madame Jacquille, who saw one of his exhibits and sort of told him she might have the key to helping him not necessarily beat his disease, but perhaps beat death. She gives him a ring, a scarab, an Egyptian scarab, which is supposed to give him some powers that might help him overcome death. In the meantime, a young woman is attacked in her car by Court, and her body has been found to have been drained of all the blood. Now, the sheriff, played by Claude Akins, who also played the sheriff in The Night Stalker, doesn't want this to get out to people. He does, to hear that there's been a body found which has been missing all of its blood might scare people, so he does all he can do to cover it up. Sound familiar? Yes. Akins played the same role in The Night Stalker, covering up the murders because he doesn't want to scare away tourists. So, there's not much originality either in the casting or in the character. Norlis and Ellen go to James' crypt, and they find James in his coffin, and they find a little scarab ring attached to him. They go and meet Norlis hears about a man named Charles Langdon, a gallery owner, who had called Ellen asking about the ring. Norlis goes and meets Langdon and has a discussion with him and says, well, it's still attached to him. So naturally, Langdon goes to rob Court's grave, which apparently is not very secure, that this guy can just walk in and take the ring. He tries to steal it, but the coffin is empty. And naturally, as Langdon goes to leave, he is attacked by James Court. Norlis goes to meet Madame Jacquille, who tells him to stay away from the Court estate, don't bother anything, because there are things going on that even he does not understand. Norlis and Ellen Court go to James's studio, and they find this statue that Ellen had never seen before. And it's made of red clay, and it sort of looks like a demon. They're visited by, you guessed it, James Court, who chases after them into the house. He possesses superhuman strength, breaking down doors, ripping the car door off as they try to escape. And again, it is a kind of a good sequence. Again, the scenes with James Court are good. They're scary, they're terrifying, they're a little action-packed. And that scene in particular is really good to see. It's raining, and you see this crazed guy out there in the rain going after them. It's a good scene. Later, Ellen's sister Marcia arrives, and she's staying in a hotel just outside of Monterey, and she is attacked by, you guessed it, James Court. Now, Norlis, again, has bought into this totally. I mean, yes, he's seen it, but he doesn't do anything to try to explain it. He just kind of accepts, this is going on. Yeah, this guy does have supernatural strength. This ring must have something to do with it. So he buys this whole thing, hook, line, and sinker. He goes and confronts the sheriff. The sheriff, of course, tells him, don't make a deal out of this. If you do, might be bye-bye, out of town. In the meantime, Norlis discovers that the statue that James Court seems to be making has an ingredient of human blood in it. The blood that Court has been draining all his victims with. Now, the deal, as Norlis finds out, is that James Court has to complete this statue of the god Sargoth, and in exchange for creating the statue, which will come to life, Court will gain immortality. The only way to stop this from happening is to take the scarab ring off of James's hand. In the meantime, it's been discovered that there are a series of tunnels under the Court estate, and this is how James Court is able to come and go through his studio, through the crypt, and everything else. Ellen Court and Madame Jekyll go down to search these tunnels looking for James Court to get this ring, while David Norlis is trying to figure out a way to stop this, figure out a way to stop Sargoth. And of course, as they're looking through the tunnels, Madame Jekyll is attacked by James Court, and Ellen falls to the ground, but James Court doesn't do anything to her. As she gets away, she discovers her sister's corpse and Langdon's corpse. But for whatever reason, James Court doesn't do anything to her. Finally, Norlis arrives, and he and Ellen go into the studio, and they surround the statue with a circle of blood, which Norlis will light on fire, and which will destroy Court and Sargoth. Court arrives, he goes to finish the statue comes to life, and sure enough, Norlis lights the circle of blood, and it destroys the studio, destroys James Court, and destroys Sargoth. End of story. Or so we think. David Norlis is nowhere to be found when his publisher arrives to listen to the tapes. And all this whole story is told on one cassette. And as his publisher puts in cassette number 2, we hear David Norlis say, "It was a week later when I got the letter." And then that's it. We are shown a scene outside David's house. The publisher is listening to this, and we don't know whatever comes of David Norlis. End of story. Now, this was supposed to be the pilot to a eventual TV series, and since this series never got made, we never find out what happens to David Norlis. And might have been a follow-up TV movie might have been nice, but we don't get that. Now, critically speaking, the Norlis Tapes is nowhere near the level of The Night Stalker. It does have some good scares, like I said, when James Court is on camera. The biggest problem to me is the character of David Norlis and the actor who plays him, Roy Finnis. Finnis has about as much emotional range as a head of lettuce. He's very dour. He's very, he doesn't, this movie is narrated the same way that The Night Stalker is. And whereas Darren McGavin gives some life and some pep and some, variation to his narration, David Norlis does not. It's a very one-note, bland performance, very one-note, bland character. In fact, all the characters in this movie just are kind of shallow. There's not a lot to them. And that to me hurts more than anything. You really aren't invested you don't care about him. You care about Carl Kolchak. Now, the narration doesn't help either. When David Norlis starts saying, I drove out to Monterey, the waves bellowed against the shore under a gray gunmetal sky. Now, who the hell talks like that in narration? It tries too hard to be literate. Like I said, Finnis just was the wrong actor to play this part, I think. But he isn't helped by the character itself. William Nolan is a very good writer, excellent writer, in fact. Just doesn't give us a lot with this screenplay. Angie Dickinson is good. Claude Akins, like I said, plays the sheriff, plays exactly the same role as he did in Night Stalker, kind of. There really aren't any other characters that really stand out. Again, not to keep comparing this to the Night Stalker, but we had not only Carl Kolchak, but we had Simon Oakland as his publisher, who was good. We had sort of the wall of authority, the DA, the sheriff, the police chief in the Night Stalker, who were good. We had Carol Lindley, who was a nice girlfriend for for Kolchak. We don't have any of that in this. Like I said, it's a smaller cast. Madame Jekyll's character isn't really well explained. Charles Langdon is in maybe 2 or 3 scenes before he's disposed of. Ellen's sister Marcia, who sort of brings Ellen to David, she's not really developed very much, except as another victim. There is none of the humor that the Night Stalker or even Night Strangler had. It's just a very dour, sour movie. Like I said, the scenes with Court are fun. They're scary. That's worth watching alone. If you're a fan of the Night Stalker, if you're a fan of the Night Strangler, if you're a fan of any of the Dan Curtis stuff that he did in the 70s, like Trilogy of Terror, he did Frankenstein, he did Dracula, he did of course Dark Shadows. If you're a fan of all that, of the Dan Curtis canon, and you haven't seen this yet, the DVD is very hard to find. You can find it on YouTube. It is worth checking out. Don't expect the Night Stalker. Don't expect the Night Strangler. Try to separate. I know I've brought that into this discussion, but try to separate it because it is 2 completely different stories, even though they both deal with vampire-like killings. The music by Robert Colbert, basically who did the Night Stalker soundtrack, is kind of the same. And I think that's what hurts, is that there isn't a lot that separates the 2 stories. Unfortunately, the characters are 2 completely different characters, but just aren't strong. So for that, I would give it, out of 4 stars, I would give it 2. Tell me what you think about, your opinion about the Norlis Tapes. If you like the video, please like it, please subscribe. Hopefully it won't be that long before I do another work. Anyway, the Norlis Tapes, worth checking out for the scares alone, worth checking out for the Dan Curtis Canyon. Hurt by a weak story, hurt by a weak protagonist, hurt by underdeveloped characters. 2 stars out of 4. That's my opinion. This is the Movie Man. I hope you enjoy a safe and fun rest of your summer.